Hi, everybody. I am Dana Litwin, CVA, and this is Priceless Advice with Leaders of Volunteers. And today, first time guests and fantastic person to work with. We did a project together. Lauren Michelle Loftin, affectionately known to friends as Lolo, is also a CVA and a CNP, Certified Nonprofit Professional, with over a decade of experience leading youth-focused programs in the nonprofit sector. Her work centers on mentoring and empowering young people to take action in their communities through civic engagement, volunteerism, and social impact. Over the course of her career, which has ranged from New York to now Texas, Lauren has mobilized close to 600 volunteers and designed mission-driven programs that build youth capacity while fostering inclusive, community-centered change. And why I want to have Lolo, you on the show, especially, is in 2024, you were a part of the same project I was with a bunch of CVA peers led by the great and wonderful Faiza Venzant, dear friend in real life, great guest on the show as well, called
Absolutely.
ADEVI, Assessing Diversity and Equity in Volunteer Involvement. And this is actually part two. The research has been going on with Professor Mark Hager and various grad students for years, contributing to what is now on Volunteer Match, absolutely for free, a fantastic toolkit called Is Everyone Welcome? And I think that's a great question to always be asking ourselves, especially in our modern times, of like,
Absolutely.
who is welcome, who is unwelcome, and do we mean it for it to be that way on purpose, or can we change things for a more positive culture impact in our organizations? And that toolkit, again, is totally free. We'll talk about that in more detail. And I love, Lola, that you always lead whatever I've seen your stuff, and it's great to have this conversation for realsies and not just working on something together through email. But I love that you lead with connection and purpose. You're always grounded in the belief that nurturing young people transforms not only their lives, but the world around them. And I think that's a great kicking off point or starting off point about transformation versus transaction, since the
Mm,
working group that you were in is the preparing volunteers for their roles. And too often, I know I've seen, and you can back me up on this, that
sure.
too many organizations, especially leadership at the top, think of volunteerism as very transactional. And whereas
Hmm.
most volunteer leaders that I've met who are, well into their careers like you and I are like, no, 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 we're trying to
Hmm.
transform. So we're trying to transform
Hmm.
their lives, the mission, the community connection. So
Right.
welcome, Lolo.
Thank you so much, Dana. And so I'm so glad that you brought this up, transformation versus transaction. And so I think throughout the past 10 years, I've worked with so many young people who are just itching at the opportunity to make a change. And so I'll just talk a little bit about this, where I'm a 90s baby, where I where it comes to technology, I had books and we would read, but now young people these days, they have the internet, they have their phones, they know what is going on, where they now can tweet about it, they now can call up, or just do anything. And so now at this point in time, like nonprofits, especially those that have volunteer programs, they can now create an avenue for young people to get involved. So when I have these conversations with teens about, well, when I'm having like an interview with them, we're saying, Lolo, like I really want to volunteer in this food pantry, and how can I sign up, how can I mobilize my friends to get involved? And I'm like, this is the action I want to see. I love this passion, this is what we need to have. And then how can we build this capacity? Because it's not just about showing up that one time, it's about how can we retain them, how can we continue to mobilize more of them to show up, but also not show up in person, but also in places where we can build that platform to just continue to bring about societal change. And so when it came to this Adevi project and creating these tools, and more specifically, one of the tools that I'll mention is through the value-based questions, because I think through the transformational portion, to not make it be transactional, where it's not just that one-time opportunity, but through those value-based questions, what I wanted to bring out in that, and through that piece, was to ensure that when these young volunteers, specifically when they take on possibly that pantry action, who is the community that they are impacting? What is it that they're actually seeing? And through these reflections, maybe it's through that survey that is created. Maybe it's through possibly that volunteer leader that, that is giving them the assignment. Maybe it's through like connecting with that particular community member and helping them pick out those grocery items or filling out that form, that they're actually understanding the connections and creating those dots for them to really understand like what is the actual root cause and why and how their service has like a profound purpose. And so it really is more of that transformational piece that kind of puts them on a line of them becoming that advocate, in the areas of addressing hunger and them having that one exact moment of being that volunteer, then becoming an advocate for addressing hunger in vulnerable communities, and then possibly, maybe being that elected official to advocate for that change in policy. So that is where all of that can lead.
And I love that, and I agree 1,000%, because I was never good at math, but 1,000% I agree. It's about that building that relationship and trust, whether it's for a few minutes or a
Mhm.
few hours or days or weeks or months of summer internship with youth, or again, ideally we as leaders of volunteers set them up and prepare them for their role, which was the working group and the set of tools that the values-based questions are included. The values-based questions are one of my favorite of the tools, even the ones that I helped
Oh,
put together. And it's one that I share very, very often. I'm constantly sharing these tools and pieces of things and other webinars and workshops and presentations and conferences because they're all so useful. And it helps,
mhm.
I think, people to understand when you do these values-based questions, how to have that deeper connection that, like you said, becomes transformational. Instead of just 10 people
Mhm.
need to show up at the kitchen to chop some onions at
Mhm.
9 a.m. and then, they're from Deloitte and Touche or the Gap or Disney or whatever, and
Right.
maybe they come back again and maybe they don't. It's like, no, this needs effort. This
Mhm.
needs someone who's an expert in this, like a CVA, or CAVS or something similar, or CNP. And
Right.
I'm wondering how you've seen change in youth versus, when you first started your career, what, not just the technology that you mentioned, but have you noticed working with a couple of youth generations now, there's the Zoomers and things that are younger than both of us, much younger than me as a Gen Xer. But have you seen a change from, say, working with your age group and then like younger millennials and other,
Mm.
and then getting into the 2000s babies and the Gen Z? Have you noticed
Mm.
something that helps someone feel connected or transformed that's a little different than how things have always been done, or maybe how they were at the beginning of your career?
That is a good question, and
It's okay if you don't
I
know the
will
answer.
no, that is a good question. I mean, I will give an honest Lolo moment, if that's all right in
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
So
always.
I will say this, that with Gen Z, I had a little bit of concerns where I was like,
Okay.
"Oh my goodness." I was like, I don't know if I'm going to receive the same amount of volunteers than I had from me as a millennial, my generation,
Hmm.
where they get it, where they understand the issues that are happening at this moment in time. But I was pleasantly surprised, I would say, more specifically in my recent role with Save the Children Action Network, where I had a group of phenomenal young women from Illinois who were so passionately involved and are still involved in Illinois. We actually met them at the Democratic National Convention. And they actually got in touch with me when I had returned, where I worked remote, where they said, we're going to mobilize our school. And they actually mobilized their community with fundraising. And they came to me and say, hey, Lolo, we actually want to do voter registration drives at this concert with Claro. And I'm a millennial. I don't know who Claro is. So if anyone is looking at this and know who Claro is, I'm sorry. I don't know who this person is, but they were doing, we want to sign up for this voter registration drive there. And we want to do fundraising and do silly putty drives and all of this stuff. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm not giving you ideas. You already have them. And so you are already doing it yourself. And so the fact that I don't have to come up with it, you're doing it yourself. It's just like, number one, you're fearless. That means like, I don't even have to worry about it. You are limitless. The opportunities are endless for you. So with people, I guess with my generation where it's like, hey, I have a million one things to do. Like I can only dedicate, like I know that this issue is important to me and I can only dedicate this much capacity to it, but I'm interested. Like, fine, I can find this particular volunteer role for you. Perfect. Like I can get this much time for you. But young people, thank God, like they're like, hey, I'm open, which has been like a great relief to me. And I think with everything, regardless of what side you're on right now, I think young people are now getting it. And unfortunately, I think with what's happening right now, I think young people specifically want to get involved now more than ever, if it's from a volunteer capacity or advocacy capacity.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too when I've worked with a lot of conservation agencies full time before I was consulting full time and as
Hmm.
clients and all sorts of other agencies as well. I'm doing an AmeriCorps
Right.
planning grant right now with clients and things. But I've also found because I am Gen X and I've watched millennials like you and my younger sister and then Gen Z and Alpha when it's littler kids are able to volunteer with their families and stuff. But
Hmm.
I've also seen that the kids, they don't want to just volunteer to just do anything anymore. And I
Hmm.
think there was certain people in each generation that are going to be more engaged as volunteers than others and be more
Hmm.
empathetic towards people and causes or more naturally drawn to something that resonates with them or that happened with them or their family that they want to help with. And
Right.
what I've noticed is, and I'm glad that you pointed it out, that not only do kids have their own ideas, they want to do things their own way, and that's
Hmm.
okay. There,
Absolutely.
I think
Hmm.
I have found, and tell me if this has been your experience, working in two vastly different areas of New York, New York and Texas, and I'm in California. There's really this idea that, Gen X, I will fully admit, we thought we were changing the world and we dropped the ball. We have dropped the ball. A lot of people have just given up the classic hashtag don't care, Generation X, don't
Hmm.
care, whatever. That's never been me, but I see that happening around me, and it does give me hope in these really, really troubling times that we're in, specifically in the
Hmm.
States and the world in general, climate change and politics and everything, that at least the kids that are engaged are super engaged, are the Greta
Hmm.
Thunbergs of today and tomorrow, are
Hmm.
growing into that sense of social responsibility. There's always kids that are like, I just want to watch TikToks and do this and be a teenager and be a kid or a young adult, or, not everyone's
Right.
into it. But I found that the passion and the engagement and the intensity of Gen Z that are involved, listen to their ideas, everybody. Please listen to them.
Hmm.
Don't force them into this is the role and only do this as a volunteer with us. Like, listen to their
Hmm.
ideas for special projects, for
Hmm.
different ways to do things, for different technological
Hmm.
approaches. And I think that intergenerational learning is essential to anyone surviving and thriving in the next little while.
I totally hear you. And I think what I definitely wanted to mention on this podcast is I think lots of nonprofits hopefully do. And I'm in the job search right now, but what I'm seeing is that a lot of nonprofits right now are really focused on advocacy, but definitely with young people. And I think within the volunteer programming that hopefully through our toolkit that will be hopefully continue to be disseminated is that please focused on youth programming, youth councils, youth voices. Please bring their voices to the table. They are necessary. Okay. Bring fellowship programs, bring where, provide youth programs where chapters can be formed at universities. That's where my bread and butter is. Not to do a plug for me, but that is where I loved my work.
Yeah, totally.
And because that's where the mobilization happened. That's where collaboration happens. Okay. I will say it, but that's where protests happen.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
but where people are saying like this stuff is wrong or we need to advocate for issues that we believe in that, and so but these are the people that are going to be leading our future generations that are going to be creating policies that change things that make lives better. And so we need to have these outlets for our young people to speak.
Now, turning to the troubling times we're in, you're between gigs right now. You're between jobs right now. the nonprofit sector is taking a heavy hit due to the current administration's political agenda, political choices. Again, I'm working closely with AmeriCorps and I'm doing things for the National Service Training, and my work has been
Mm,
severely impacted. And we're seeing a lot of, not just at the government level, a lot of layoffs, many of which are illegal or unconstitutional, but it gets caught up in courts. But the ripple effect, and I was very, very sorry to hear that this occurred to you, is that downstream with grants and funding and things being so chaotic and up in the air because of these political winds and whims, that more and more colleagues like you I'm seeing are like, well, I was laid off, I was cut, the grant didn't come through, we're not sure AmeriCorps is going to do this, we're not sure this funder is going to do this, they're turning in this
mhm.
direction. How are you kind of coping and focusing on what your next steps are? And I think that's some advice that a lot of people watching are in the same boat and would appreciate, of just, do you just tune out the news, or do you try to like
Mm.
limit certain things? Like what's a secret to kind of keep hope alive and inspiration and joy in your own career while you're looking for the next opportunity?
I will say the best tip that I can give, and I'm in this mist right now, is I think to lean into self discovery. I will say that this has been a whirlwind for me. I will say I've gone through times of uncertainty in my life, definitely with COVID, for sure. But I think this one has allowed me to just take a pause for a second. I think for both of us who have worked in the nonprofit sector and for those who have worked in public service, this is purposeful, meaningful work, which also means that when you do have a job, but also when you don't, that it does lead to burnout. And I'm pretty sure for a good majority of us, maybe at times in our life, survival mode. So I know that after, I had left Save the Children Action Network, which was an amazing experience. I needed to take a break,
Yeah.
and so that looked like, hey, I need some sleep. My brain was like, hey, you don't have to work on Monday, and I'm like, I don't have to work on
I
Monday.
can sleep
I
in
can
on
just
Monday.
exactly. I could sleep in. And so that also meant, okay, I do like my post that everyone's doing of the hashtag layoff. And then also just where I'm seeing the devastation of where I'm seeing the post, like I have applied to 371 jobs and the 14 applications. And I'm like already in panic mode. And I'm thinking, do I have to do the same thing? Oh my gosh, of what this person is doing. And so my mind is like, you got to turn it off. You have to turn it off. But then also in conjunction with the news and everything else, I'm saying, like, okay, your brain can't handle all this.
Yeah.
Your brain can't handle all this. And so even now, I have to create this moment of peace in my life at this moment while I try to figure out the next step. And that has led to self-discovery, Dana, that I actually, in hindsight had in 2020 during COVID, where at the time I didn't realize that I had creative gifts, where I didn't realize that I could freehand sketch and paint. I had no idea. I had no idea. And it was my own sanctuary for 5 months while I was trying to figure out, as this extrovert that I am, as you can see, trapped at home without seeing friends, going outside. Painting and freehand sketching was my sanctuary. And so now I had discovered that I'm a writer. I had no idea that I'm a writer. And so through that, though, I was able to really process a lot of things, but also was able to discover, you know what, girl, how many other personal projects have you left on the back burner because of your identity to work? So, what are some things that you said you would start, but because of fear, right, you didn't pursue? And so now I'm pursuing something called Thriving Bariatrics, which is yes, support and connection, which I said I'm not going to shrink anymore. I'm going to take up space. And so it's a support and connection group for bariatric patients like me who have had bariatric surgery and are trying to navigate a new and healthy life. And so I wanted to create that space for those who, for them to not feel alone. And so it's something that's very new. I literally just started last week.
Yay,
but
brand
I
new skills. Yeah.
Yes, brand new skills of like social media and like outreach, and all through now where I'm also going back to school in a way where I will say this too. 11 years ago, I applied to Cornell Law School, didn't get in. That's okay. But now I am I'm starting their policy and advocacy certificate, where the first course is community organizing, where now it's all connecting the dots. So it's like, I just didn't, you never know how it lines up for you. So I tell people, if you do have the capacity, just take a step back and pause. Don't try to search for it. Let it come to you. Lean into that discomfort, because then you never know where the next, path, or the next like idea, or just something that you didn't think about. Like just, you wouldn't have, because I just would never think that I would just start this. So maybe for someone else, you just never know. And just the other thing that I say is like, I had to discover this too, or just come to this realization that, I hate to say it plain like this, but jobs are temporary, but you
Yeah,
have this whole life. You
right.
have this whole life, and you have this whole identity that you can build outside of that. So don't make your job your identity. And that's what I had to unlearn too.
And that's a tough lesson, I think, when you get into real adulthood in your 30s, and for some folks in their 20s. I was
Mhm.
I thought I was going to be a veterinarian most of growing up, and then I decided at the last minute to go to music school instead of UC Davis for a lot of life reasons. Being a Gen Xer, there's a couple more decades that I have where, like, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, and we're still feeling like impacts, and you still catch that virus and
Mhm.
you still catch those germs, and it's still smart to
Mhm.
mask when you can, especially on airplanes, things like that.
Sure.
But I think
I still
that,
mask.
yeah, 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 me too. But I think in 2020 and the things that have happened since then, we are not designed to be under this much distress and stress and
Mhm.
adrenaline and cortisol in our brains. We're not designed to do that. So I think that's a very healthy approach, especially if life has given you other stressful situations, like being between jobs, unemployment, all the things that we joke about. But it is very serious, and it does take community care for us to come together and support each other through this. And
Mm.
my identity has sometimes been tied to the work that I do, but I've
Mm.
tried getting to that place where you are. And I think that's a great lesson for any leader of volunteers of any age at any point in their career. Is sometimes you do have to be really selective of being aware
Mhm.
of the news and aware of the world, and not putting your head in the sand, but really focusing on, especially when there's so much bad news happening all the time, and specific targeting of groups and populations. How can you help right now? Where can you create art or joy for yourself and
Mhm.
others? Where can you create comfort? Where can you reduce or stop harm?
Mhm.
That's become even more of my philosophy, and I think lines up
Mhm.
really well with what you're talking about, of discovering where's that balance to hopefully keep some semblance of sanity.
For sure.
And being
No.
able to go forward and have hope. And hope is an action verb. It's not static. Hope means taking action on things and doing things, whether that's a little thing once a week or once a day for yourself or other people. Especially as leaders and volunteers, I think we recognize this. And I just really admire that that's what you've been able to lean into and take away from it and turn around for it. Do you want to connect with people on the various social medias? Like, I'll post your LinkedIn and how to get in touch with you. And what are you hoping to work with youth again, or what are you looking for next steps aside from sketching and painting and creative writing?
Right. So, of course, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at laurenmloftin@gmail.com. For sure, I would love to connect with youth again in a professional capacity, of course. Definitely would love to volunteer more in my community. I'm still very new to Texas, very, very new. This will be like my second year, I think,
Mhm.
anniversary in Texas. So, definitely would love to get more involved there. Would love to do, I think, a lot of my CVAs, I'm so just impressed with the work and the breadth of the work that my CVAs do, and I would love to continue to build in that space. So I think my next venture, I think, is to do a training in a conference. Hopefully to do more of those and to not shrink. So I think that's the other part where if I could end with this, or say this last bit, Dana, is that I've loved the work that I've done for 10 years. I can't believe it's been 10 years, the growth that I've seen. I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to try not to cry on this podcast, but I think
Crying
the
is
other,
fully acceptable on Priceless Advice. Crying is encouraged and
oh,
acceptable. You don't
thank
have to go
you.
hide in the car and cry. You can cry
Oh, thank
here.
you.
The safe
But I think
space.
thank you. I think the part that I really want to try to lean into with this, whole thing that has happened is to no longer shrink anymore. And so to take up space, as a Black woman, as a CVA, as a CNP, and to peacefully resist in the best way, in the best way that I can. And so to lean into these spaces means everything. And so I just appreciate the opportunity and the platform you gave me. You are such an inspiration with everything that you do. And so I just thank you for the time.
Oh, thank you. It's a delight to talk with you, Lolo. And I was so proud and glad to see your involvement with Adevi. And again, Sarah Philippe has recently been on Priceless Advice. And so I'm
Oh,
featuring more and more folks like you, CVAs who are in these working groups and doing this amazing work to offer, that central question, is everyone welcome? And if not, why not, and what can we do to change that, and why there's a lot of good reasons to change that, and get into good trouble and be some sand in the gears here and
good
there,
trouble.
get into that good trouble. But I thank you so much, Lolo, for being part of the show, and I would love to talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But you have a lot going on to do creatively, and I want to support that. And I hope that I do see you in conferences. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your priceless advice today. And again, everyone, if you want to get in touch with Lolo, or you got some cool gig coming up you want to get her involved with, or have her write an article or be in your conference, all the contact information is in the video description below. So thank you again so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the week. Take care.